Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you if you are an entrepreneur, because you are an author. Now, you might not have realised that. You may have a solo book, you may have an anthology, you may have a blog, but if you're an entrepreneur, I can guarantee you're on socials, aren't you? That is a form of writing. So you are already an author. Didn't think of it that way, huh? Well, what about speaking? Because this is from page to stage. Every time you open your mouth, you are on stage. So there you go. Let's take you from the page and to the stage. Now, I am so excited to share with you this conversation today with a gorgeous lady by the name of Joyce Perrin, who's kind of blazed a trail for me. Joyce has a wonderful tale to tell of travel, and she's written a gorgeous book. So, Joyce, you've got so much more about you than I know. So would you please introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about who you are and how you've got to where you are today. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, let me see. I'm a Canadian. I live in just outside of Toronto. And so I lived in various different countries. I had the opportunity once my children were married and I was an empty nester. I went and worked in Saudi Arabia for 3.5 years in the healthcare field because I was one of the first female CEOs in Canada, breaking that ceiling. And let me tell you, it was pretty hard to crack. Anyway, then I worked in Saudi Arabia for 3.5 years, and that gave me the opportunity to really learn about traveling and being comfortable. And after that, I just traveled for another 20 years with my backpack, and away I went. And I was 57 when I started my journey because my children were all married, and that gave me the opportunity. But my passion is travel. You know, it was stimulated when I was a Girl Guide and I represented Canada at the international camp in Sweden. And there I met Lady Baden Powell. And she was just such a role model.
That was Sweden, did you say?
Yes, in Sweden. She was there. And I met people from all over the world. And I thought, oh my goodness, I really want to meet them and live with them and find out what they do, how they eat, what they eat, do they go to school, what they wear on their feet, you know, because this was, of course, before internet and before any sort of things. We went to the movies to get the news. You know, I'm 87, I'll be 88 in November. So you can see that my journey has passed through many different generations, and it's such a wonderful thing. Just, you know, I started with my journey and I took copious notes, very detailed notes as I went through. Then it took a while to write because, you know, sometimes 80 came and I was sitting down to write and oh my goodness, didn't I get cancer?
Oh, no.
It's cancer. And so then things took a little turn for the worst. I'm blind in one eye now. And so I was writing, but you know, as a CEO, you write different things. I wrote in terms of journals, professional journals, lots of articles there. But I had to go back to school to learn how to write in a creative way.
Right, yes.
So I went back for 2 years during my cancer treatment. So it took a long time to get everything worked out.
Did that help take your mind off the cancer journey you were going through?
Well, the thing with my cancer treatment, I was just exhausted. It just took a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And it just took a lot of time to do things. But I had a supportive group of people we worked with.
Mhm.
And then when I went back to school, it gave me more focus. And I think it was a really good idea. It
Yeah.
just took longer than it would normally do if you were doing it when you were healthy.
Sure, sure.
You know, we all have journeys to take, and you never know
Mhm.
what they're going to be. But
True.
I really wanted to inspire others to follow their passion, especially people, especially women who, excuse me, after they uh, have their career, and maybe they're an empty nester too. And then what are they going to do with their lives? And the thing is that nowadays we're all going to be living till 90s. And so as people retire at 60, say, they've got 30 more years.
Exactly. I often ask people, what are you retiring to? I know what you've retired from, but what are you going to do as you retire to? Most of the cohort that I went through university with are now in the process of retiring. So that's always my question. What are you retiring to? And they go, I hadn't thought of that. But as you say, potentially we've got 30 years of life after retirement.
Yes.
Um,
And that is, it's never happened before in history.
mm,
So you're breaking new ground. And it's not easy for people to think about these things.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, when yes, you have a few years on me, but the point is that when we were growing up, you left school, you went to work, you did the same career all the way through to your retirement, you got your gold watch, and probably a year or so later, that was it, you were gone. It is a
Exactly.
very different world now, isn't it?
It is a very different world. I mean, people have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different jobs,
Yes.
and they can work anywhere in the world, many of them. Like you, you're a perfect example of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's kind of where you started with your writing for this book. But take me back. When did you start writing at all? Were you a childhood writer? Did you journal as a child? Tell us about that.
Yes, I journaled as a child. I wrote. I have dyslexia, very
Okay.
severe dyslexia. So it was very much of a struggle to write, but
Mhm.
it worked out. I had a good memory, and so I was able to come over those challenges. In
Yes.
the younger years, I didn't do a lot of writing, but as I grew in my profession and I was able to manage the dyslexia,
Mhm.
then I was able to um, become a writer, and I liked it. And I liked being able to share my journeys, and I was always very curious, very, very curious. When I was Girl Guide, I took the Girl Guide book, and you have little programs that you can learn about. You can learn about the stars, you can learn about all different kinds of oceans. And to do that, I had to find examiners because people weren't doing these things in my particular group. But
Right.
I had a wonderful leader. Her name was Peggy Martin, and she just taught me about leadership. And that, I believe, guides form the relationship that I needed to become a CEO in my hospital field way back
Mm.
then. So with Lady Baden Powell, I had the opportunity to meet her again back in Edmonton.
Oh, you did twice then.
Yeah, well, I met her many times. I'll tell
Right.
you. So I met her in London when we first arrived in London. We had a tea, and I met her then. I was just so in awe of her. She was so gracious and so kind and so interesting. And then at the Girl Guide camp, I just happened to, I was the one that was chosen to go to the opening ceremonies to represent Canada. And guess who was there? Lady Baden Powell. So we met again. And then I just happened to be going to the dinner at at the headquarters. And guess who they put me sitting beside? Lady Baden Powell. And then
Oh, wonderful.
our camp. And then I was there. So we met and then we got chatting. And she said, well, I'm going to be in Edmonton. I said, well, let's get together. So we went and had tea. She was so interesting. And oh my goodness, I have this wonderful letter from her. And it was just so fascinating how she wrote the story of our meeting. Then she signed all my photos. What a generous lady. And then she left me with, well, the Girl Guide camp was just the beginning of seeing the world and seeing different people and how people are working together and enjoying each other. And that message really stayed with me and it was sort of became my motto. So that formed the basis of my travel, really, and my curiosity for the world.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. Picking up on the point that you made about having dyslexia, obviously in your day when you were going through school, that wasn't recognized. But I love the way that you pulled on your auditory memory. My father was in a similar situation and of the same vintage as yourself, slightly older. And he had a phenomenal memory for poems. When he heard things repeated over and over and over again, I mean, he could give you the whole of loads and loads of Kipling and Wordsworth, and even to more or less to his dying day, and he was 95 when he passed. He could recite long screeds of poetry because that was the way he could remember, by repeating. So I love the fact that you were both on the same page in terms of working your way around your challenges. Yeah, fabulous.
No, everybody has challenges. And it just, some people can handle them in certain ways and other people need to handle them in different ways. But we all handle them some way or the other. So it's always such a fascinating situation for me when I was traveling. The thing I loved most was meeting the people in their homes. And whenever I could, I stayed with them and really learned about their culture and learned about what they did. And it was just so enlightening and it gave me such a broad perspective of the world.
Yes. I'm going to ask you then, so of all the different places that you visited, which particular culture did you feel you broadened your horizons with the most?
I think it was the ones, well, I stayed with a family in Zimbabwe and I got to know them the best. Well, and Zambia. So I would say those, and then I stayed with people in South Africa, but they were very similar to us. But Zimbabwe and Zambia, they're very different. They're very patriarchal.
Yeah.
And the women do all the chores. And when I was in Zambia, I stayed with the family, and part of the thing was I was doing the chores that the women did. I tell you, washing clothes in a cold river with the water rushing by so quickly, you had to hold on to the clothes so tightly and one eye and try to scrub them, and then you'd hit jeans against the rocks, clean them. It was awfully hard work.
Yeah.
And cold.
Yes.
And cold. And so the women in Zimbabwe work very, very hard. I mean, cooking, before I left, I bought them. I went to the store and I wanted to buy big fry pans because they just had little fry pans for 10 people.
Mhm.
It was, you had to make 3 or 4 batches to
Yep.
serve them. And they didn't have the things in the stores. I
Mhm.
couldn't buy them because they weren't there.
Yes.
Excuse me. But the thing that warmed my heart was that one of the daughters I was helping with algebra, and I was there. And I thought, oh my goodness, I needed to practice because it's been so long that I'd done any algebra. And I asked her for a piece of paper. Well, they didn't have a piece of paper. The only thing I got was about this much on the bottom of the newspaper. That was the only thing I could practice on.
Yeah.
And they had one book for the whole pupils in the school.
Yeah.
And they only had it one night.
Mm.
And it went around. And this was her night to get the book. So she had to do like 2 or 3 different chapters. And that was her turn.
Yes.
It was quite amazing. But then I got a letter from them, and she had passed her course. She was in law school and she became a lawyer.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was wonderful because that was new women taking on different kinds of jobs, being able to do that, being able to go to school, being accepted to go to school. And so that would really warm my heart. And it was so nice to get that letter from them.
And I mean, in and of itself, you must have been an inspiration to them, because I've no doubt you shared your story about having gone to Saudi, and also back in the day when you were a CEO in Canada as a woman, because that was unheard of, as you mentioned already. So your own life story, sharing with the girls in Zimbabwe, whilst it was way different to them, nonetheless, the inspiration behind your story, the story behind the story, would have been really helpful to them. Oh, lovely. Thank you.
It was so warming to hear that she became a lawyer. That was just amazing. And not that her uncle, where she lived, was supportive of it. That was the big thing.
Yes.
He was supporting her to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a real break away from tradition, isn't it?
Yes. It was really a very big change.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful that I would get so angry with him because of the way he'd treat the women. But of course I had to keep my thoughts to myself. But it was one of the funny things is the first night I was there, I went to get into the bed, and all of a sudden this something ran out from under the sheets as I lift them up. And it was a big lizard about this big. And I said, oh, I screamed, and he came and knocked on the door. Are you okay? He said. I said, yes, I'm fine. I said, there was just a lizard in my bed. He said, oh. As if it was a normal thing to have happen.
Well, lizard is one thing. Scorpion would be something entirely different.
Yes, it would be. Well, this was it, but it was a big lizard.
Not what you were expecting.
And not what I expected. And remember that all I had was a candle. So I couldn't really do much.
And the shadows and that, oh golly, yes, I can only imagine. Oh, okay. So Joyce, we thought about your writing bit. Tell us about your speaking, would you?
Oh, well, I love to speak. And, I think about I think about speaking. I want to share my story because I really want to inspire people women and men. And actually, one of my biggest group of followers are young men in their 30s. They think that this is pretty cool what I did.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting to me. I didn't know where the interest would be, but it's for my book, it's men, women, it doesn't matter. It and I've had some great reviews from men on my Amazon, reports and things like that. But now, what was the question? Sorry,
Well, before we go back to the speaking, when did your book come out?
I came out a year and a half ago.
Okay. Did I see you reach for it?
Yes. Oh, this is it.
That's okay. We'll do a screenshot. Ants in your pants. Oh, how perfect is that?
Yeah, ants in my pants. One
woman's unexpected adventures across 7 continents. What a gorgeous title. Audience, this is where we will put in the show notes Joyce's link to go and get that. Okay, because that will be, as you can already gather from the conversation that we've been having, one very good read. Beautiful. So we were talking about your speaking. So Joyce, are you somebody who likes to speak virtually? Do you like to do in-person ones? Obviously, you're very good at doing podcasts. Tell us a bit more about your speaking.
Well, I like to do in person most, because then I can connect with the audience, and then I love the questions and there's much more interaction.
Yes.
I do virtual. I do virtual because it's easy now, and travel isn't so much fun as it used to be.
No.
Sure. And so I do both, and I'm open to any kind of a conversation. Yes. Usually they last an hour, and then 15 minutes of that is for questions.
Beautiful.
And, I do a lot in the local area around here, excuse me, with libraries and women's groups and church groups. And we have an organization called Probus here, which is a group of seniors, usually 55 and over, and they have speakers every month. And there are a number of clubs like that. So I've spoken to a lot of those clubs too.
Lovely, thank you. Well, I would imagine that also in the past, when you were doing your CEO work, you had to do presentations as well, did you?
Yes, I did. And I actually have spoken in Dubai as well as Saudi Arabia. So it's it was very interesting. But that again is a little different kind of speech. And so
culturally, that would have been a bit of a, oh, hang on, there's a woman speaking to a group of men. Oh.
Well, this is it. In Saudi Arabia, I was really blessed. I had a wonderful CEO, and he was very interested in supporting me, and invited me to his house for dinner with many of the senior people who were going to take part in a program that I organized in Riyadh, where we were at Security Forces Hospital offering a quality improvement week program for all the hospitals in Saudi Arabia. And so we had dinner at his house, and I was the only woman there, which was very unusual. And everybody spoke English. They were very generous. They spoke English. And of course, their first language is Arabic. And we had a great conversation. The food was delicious, but let me tell you about how the servants introduced us to the meal. We were all sitting around the table, and then they brought some oud, some incense, and they had it in the incense holder. And then the men had gutras, which were white, very fine cloth kind of like a, what would you call it? Just came down over their head and down their back. And
they're the ones that are held on with the like sort of ropey type things.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And what they did is they took it, flipped it over, and the incense was here. And they took in this deep, deep breath. And oh my goodness, it was very interesting to watch them because they all just loved it. And then they came to me, so I went like this because I didn't have anything to put over. And it was very musky, sensuous. It was lovely. And then we went on and had our dinner. But that's the way we started the dinner.
I'm imagining you were wearing a scarf, were you?
No, I didn't have to wear a scarf in the house. In the house, no.
Oh, of course, in the house, yes. But the fact that you were in amongst men, that would have surprised. I would have thought they'd have had to wear.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to wear. I didn't have to cover my face, or I didn't have to cover or wear anything on my head.
Oh.
When I was outside, I was supposed to have my hair covered, but I never had to cover my face.
Right.
And
yes.
In the time when the religious police in Saudi Arabia were very, very strong. It doesn't happen now. They don't have the religious police anymore.
Oh, do they not? Right. Okay.
So things have changed a lot. And in fact, if you want to visit Saudi Arabia, you can go now.
As a solo woman?
As a solo woman, because they're tours.
Right.
Yeah. And they're opening up to tourists. Right. And I would love to go. I'm not traveling as much anymore.
Understandably.
Medical issues, as you know. Yeah. And I have some other ones too. But at 88, almost 88 in November, well, it's okay. I'm still doing okay.
You're doing very well, Joyce. Because the thing is, once you go past 80, your insurance, it can be as much, if not more, than your airfare.
Oh, it's just out of sight. Right. So I say to people, do your traveling before 80. You're absolutely right. If you can get on a group plan, do it while you're young.
Yes, definitely. Oh, thank you, Joyce. Oh, so much new information. I mean, I love the fact that every day is a learning day, and you've just really blown my mind today. So thank you. I'm just imagining the incense. Wonderful. A beautiful picture in my head. So we've looked at your writing. We've looked at your speaking. Tell us what you're working on at the moment. Is there another book in the offing?
Well, I was thinking about doing a second book, but I think I really enjoy the speaking. If I can maybe do more speaking, I would like to do that.
Because the thing is, now, in this day and age, if the writing is a bit onerous, and again, audience, if any of you are in a similar situation to Joyce and have the dyslexia issue, we've all got one of these little fellas. You can speak into it, and there is there are apps and things that will do a voice to text conversion. So you can actually speak your book into life. Yes,
it's funny. I find it harder to do than writing. I like the writing motion. I like that. But there are all sorts of ways to do it, which is wonderful because it opens it up to everybody. Yes, and now absolutely. With AI, that's the other thing. AI is, there are many books out now that are just written by AI. And it's kind of, I'm just not sure where I sit in that. Progress is progress, but I don't know.
The thing is that if like you want to speak about your book, audience, this is you as well. If it's been AI generated, how much of it is your story? Now, if you are presenting the contents of your AI-driven book, I'm a great believer in using AI, but it's also, this is what this is the parameters that to speak in. This is my voice. You have to train it. And what I then do is I take the information that it's spat out and gone, yeah, that's not quite how I'd say it. And I amend it so that absolutely when I stand on stage, whatever that stage happens to be, it's my story and I deliver it.
Right, right. And of course, AI might use different words than you would use. So you
Yes.
have to personalize them and make them sound like you.
Yeah.
But
Yes, exactly.
it certainly is a faster way to do it. I
Mm.
mean, I'm sure that people are writing books in just very little time.
Absolutely. I mean, there are courses that you can write a book in a weekend.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think, wow.
Yes.
And I guess it's a learning curve, and it's as you say, you want to make sure it's yours.
Yes.
How do you make sure it's yours? And I think that's a struggle that a lot of writers are having now,
Yeah.
because they can't help but use this new system to speed up the process.
But you know what? There are also now apps that you can put something written through it and it will detect how much of that is AI driven. So this has been introduced. I've been talking to people who are involved in higher education, so that people who don't just put in papers, put in assignments and even dissertations that have been AI driven, because they've been checked and it's the app has gone, hello, there's rather a lot of AI driven information in here, not your own work.
Yes, I had a friend whose daughter, it was an assistant, said this was AI driven, and she said it wasn't. She did not do any AI on it.
Right.
And I don't know how it ended.
Ooh.
Because people may think it was AI driven, or there might be one or two words that were in their AI. And how much is AI driven, and how much is AI, and how much is yourself? I don't know. It must be very difficult for the professors. In fact, one of my friends who teaches said, we encourage our students to use AI. They said, we encourage them to use AI because it's much faster. They can put in the information, they can get it. It saves a lot of time. And we encourage them, but we ask them to rewrite it in their own words.
Yes.
However, that's pretty hard to do. I would.
Yes, because if the language used is really rather good, yeah, you kind of then dumbing it down to how I would write it. I don't like the sound of that, but yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, when we were going through tertiary education, it was back to the library and the encyclopedias, wasn't it?
Right. So we used to take information from that, and people would copy it word for word.
And that was called plagiarism.
But people didn't really think about it. Plagiarism, yes, if you did a lot of it, but nobody took it too seriously.
We had we had, because I went through uni in the days before the internet. So yes, I mean, there were sections that we would quote copy out of, but it was always referenced. That's the word I'm after, referenced. So that was allowed, because then you would pull out a quote and then you would expound on it. But yeah.
Exactly.
Things have changed.
People are referencing AI. I've seen it in a document that referenced AI.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. Yeah.
But if you look at it that way, we did it from other books and we just referenced it. So what's the difference of having AI do it?
Exactly. Oh, my goodness, things have changed, haven't they?
Haven't they? It's really something. I'm sure you find this as you go around the world, talking to different people. Are people using a lot of AI?
That certainly the places that I've been to, there are, if English is not their first language, yes, because then you have access to all of this well-constructed language that may not be quite how I would have phrased it as I'm translating it from my mother tongue. So yes, in that respect, there is a lot of AI being used, and you can more or less tell when it's not being used. I work with a couple of clients who English is definitely not their first language. And one of the guys is Creole first language, French second language, English third language. And the number of times I've said to him, "You're thinking in French, aren't you?" "Yes, can you tell?" "Uh-huh." So yes, that is very useful when, as I said, if you're writing or speaking in English and it's not your first language and you haven't quite learned to think in English yet, then using AI can help you out on that one.
That's it. Well, it's going to continue to be a great conversation piece.
So it is. So it is. Okay, so at the moment you've got your book out, you're focusing on the talking, you're focusing on the speaking about this wonderful adventure that is your life. I'm wondering now then, when you are on stage, how do you take your words and embody them from page to stage?
Usually I taught, what I like to do is really start sort of with a visualization of where I am. And then I imagine the faces of my audience kind of lighting up with curiosity if they're stepping into the stories with me. And I try to be as descriptive as possible. My book is quite descriptive, and people have said, "How did you remember all those details?" Well, I took copious notes. I always wrote every night. So I have all these diaries and books from all these years. And so that's where I have kept the details. It's the genuine passion and deep connection with the experiences that really bridge my words to their imagination. And that's what I encourage everybody to speak from the place of, their authenticity or their trust, to require that people really resonate with what you're saying in the hearts and the minds of the people listening, because you have to connect with them.
Yes.
That's the thing when you're there. So I try to bring them along as along with me, as if they're right beside me and they're seeing what I'm seeing.
Well, even the conversation that we've had today, when you're describing the headgear and the wafting of the incense, I was right there with you. I was not next door to you because you had a couple of gentlemen next to you. I was a little further around the table, just enjoying the whole scene. And you're right, when you paint such a vivid picture, you can draw people in. You can even imagine, you were mentioning the musk smell and all those wonderful aromas. I was right there with you, smelling it, enjoying the warmth of the summer evening. And yeah, I nearly said, were you around a low table? Were you at a Western style table? So all of those wonderful details, and you can pull people into the scene. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that was so amazing about that, he had wonderful carpets on the wall. When you have a very exquisite carpet, you often hang them.
Yes.
And he had one that was definitely a museum piece. It was with gold leaf, gold thread woven through it. It was just stunning. You could not take your eyes away from it. It was just amazing. Of course,
as you say, it's a piece of art.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah, for sure.
I understand also that the carpet makers intentionally miss one thing out, so that it's not absolutely perfect. Because what I've heard is only Allah is perfect. Therefore, we have to put in one slight flaw.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I've never heard that.
Yes.
But that, you know, certainly could be.
Yeah.
But I do know that they do make, they put their signature somewhere on the carpet.
Yeah.
Whatever that signature is, it may be a miss in the pattern.
Beautiful, beautiful. So many cultural experiences you've had. Thank you so much for sharing just a little bit of them. As we're winding up, Joyce, are there any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with us?
I think the most important thing is to really follow your passion, no matter how long it takes. If you've got a passion, like I had a passion for travel, it took me till I was 57 to be able to do it the way I wanted to do it. I did travel and ski and that sort of thing, but it wasn't quite the same until I was able to. The opportunity comes if you keep the motion, the open, and the thought there, that somehow you'll be able to do it. So just be patient and, you know, keep those things in your mind, because often they do turn out. Yeah.
Keep the dream alive. Beautiful. Now, before we started to record, you mentioned that you were going to offer our audience a very precious commodity. Can you share that with us?
Yes, I would be glad to offer one person in the audience. We can make a draw of some kind. And it's a 45-minute consultation. It's about travel, and I can help them plan their travel. I'm not a travel agent, but I'll just help them organize their trip, or just bring in a lot of things that I've learned along the way about travel. And hopefully that would be very helpful.
Well, I tell you what, I'm up for the draw. No, I can't enter my own draw, can I? No, that's a shame. Okay, audience, you've heard it from the lady herself. There's the opportunity for a 45-minute consultation about travel plans and how you pull all these things together. So if you are not a seasoned traveler and you haven't got one of those wonderful checklists of have you got your visa, have you got this, have you got that sorted out, this is the lady to talk to. What I would love you to do is, when you've watched this, comment in the show notes, below the show notes, and we will do a draw. I'm going to put a time limit on this. So in terms of when you can apply for this, what's the best time? Should we leave it a few months so that people have got the opportunity? Because Joyce, this was going to go out in September. So how about we leave it to Black Friday, and we'll make the draw before Black Friday. How's that?
That sounds fine.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Joyce. I've had a wonderful time.
I really appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I hope to, we'll be communicating as we have been before. And so we'll talk again. Thank you.
Certainly will. We certainly will. Thank you very much, Joyce, for sharing your from page to stage.
Thank you. All the best in your continued travels around the world.
Thank you so much.
So proud of what you're doing. It's marvelous. Bye-bye.